Hi everyone, thanks for subscribing to my channel. Today I want to speak about a deal that was reached between the Irish government and the US State Department about purchasing 44 million euros worth of Javelin missiles and lightweight command launch units. Now, we've seen deals with the Irish government and the military industrial complex, and specifically around the United States, for a number of years. And we've seen, for instance, this deal has to go through Congress for final approval. Now, as I said, the US State Department approved this deal of Javelin missiles and lightweight command units under the remit of the Defence Security Cooperation Agency. Now, last year I did a video on Micheál Martin, who was Minister of Defence at the time, who travelled over to the Atlantic Council and he was talking to a lot of the military industrial complex heads. And of course, now is the time to start readying up the cash and transferring more money across to profit these giant corporations, which benefits, as I said, big rich billionaires rather than the interests of ordinary people. But of course, Micheál Martin is more interested in representing the people and the masters in Brussels and Washington DC than ordinary people. But it's very interesting because to back up that remark, you have seen reports on the US State Department which has stated that the sale will support the foreign policy and national security of the United States. Isn't this interesting? It's not to support and provide security for the Irish state. The sale will support the foreign policy and the national security of the United States. This is the way it's being pushed forward in towards Congress. So when did we decide to defend the United States borders? Ask Martin around that and his trips around the world, and specifically to Washington DC to meet the Atlantic Council. And of course, last week we had the meeting of Pascal Donoghue, who travelled across to Washington to have the annual meeting of the IMF and the World Bank, who coincidentally are also located in Washington DC. Now, of course, Ireland has been part of NATO's Partnership for Peace. You couldn't make this stuff up. A Partnership for Peace since 1999, where a lot of our public money has been transferred into this move towards, inverted commas, peace. But of course, we know what NATO is, a militarist alliance that really benefits the imperial powers, is not interested in peace. But of course, it's about the interoperability of the defence, working together on a large-scale basis across the European Union towards a drive towards a European army. Now, they always say during the NATO Partnership for Peace, or it's put across, that it is a bilateral cooperation between countries, across Euro-Atlantic countries and partners, and it's to increase stability, diminish any sort of threats and work towards peace and build security relationships. This is interesting. I laugh because really what sort of spin and nonsense comes out through the military industrial complex. And at the same time, we've seen Ireland, for instance, transfer more money towards Ukraine, notwithstanding the EU temporary directive, protection directive, where over 15,000 Ukrainians have come to Ireland. Of course, the Irish political leaders are always the first men and women to put their hands up to be the best boys and girls in the class. We've seen that with the bank bailout. We've also seen that with the temporary directive as well. And who cares about the people here and the impacts on our basic public services, not to mention the homeless crisis and all the other myriad of crises we have that's pushing down, and specifically on working class communities. And really what's fascinating with this is the 100 million has been transferred across between non-lethal aid, it's been said. Now maybe these javelins will be sent to Ukraine, who knows, but of course it's going to be non-lethal aid. 80 million has been used for procurement partnerships across European Union member states, including radar systems, they state, and as well 20 million has been used for demining. So if you look at it, the Rearming Europe plan is coming up, this 800 billion deal that all the countries are going to be on the hook for, in terms of increasing the spending on, inverted commas, defence, up to probably 2, 3, 4, 5%. The US have said they want an equalisation of funding across the European Union through those countries who are in terms of the defence budgets. So here we go again, more money spent on the weapons manufacturers, the military industrial complex. And it's also interesting when you look at where this deal is being purchased from. Companies like Lockheed Martin and RTX Corporation, which is formerly known as Raytheon. Now, of course, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin are mainly owned by institutional investors. And let's look who's behind these institutional investors who own these military industrial complex corporations. We have BlackRock, we have Vanguard, we have State Street, we have JP Morgan, the usual suspects that are profiting from the misery of war. And that's what they always say. Let's bolster up our defences, bolster up the military industrial complex for peace. Ireland, as a neutral country, should of course have a policy of self-defence and not be reliant on other countries in terms of controlling the airspace, our waters, our economic zone around the coast of Ireland as well. Of course that should be supported, and that starts with supporting proper defence forces and paying people properly and with the conditions as well. Not part of a European army, not a drive towards militarism. At the same time, Martin is trying to erode the triple lock, which again gives a safety valve essentially for people in Ireland against the neutrality which is being eroded. And of course the vast majority of people in Ireland still support the idea of neutrality, but the whole discussion around neutrality needs to be out in the open. It needs to be put to the people fundamentally, because the people fundamentally are the final arbiters in all the decisions of the state, and the policy should derive from the people of the state. But Martin won't do this. He'll leave it to the Irish government that will erode it, and it's part of protecting their single market. So they'll be pushing people off to serve in Ukraine or God knows where else at the behest of their masters in Brussels. It's really lunacy. And really, if you funnel it all back, plenty of money to spend on weapons of war rather than helping solve our housing disaster. But no, see, it pushes into the narrative that they're pushing towards more militarism in the European Union, a bigger militaristic bloc, European army, and this is part of the Rearm Europe plan that von der Leyen concocted up herself at the behest of all her military industrial complex friends. And of course these economies which are struggling and suffering because of the war in Ukraine and the fallout from lockdowns as well. So reindustrialise Europe through the military industrial complex rather than create the enemy. Really couldn't make this stuff up. Rather than looking for diplomacy, standing up on a platform for peace, have mutual respect for countries, and that's fundamentally where Ireland should stand in terms of using our voice for peace. Of course, you look back at Irish history and look back at people like Frank Aiken, who brought forward the non-proliferation treaty around the added increase of nuclear weapons in the world. And this was the added threat during that period of time, which was significant. So it shows you the voice can be used in a very proactive, productive, and in a peaceful manner that stands up for the interests of ordinary people, because wars never ever serve the interests of ordinary people, and working class people are the ones who suffer and die and sent to the front lines to die. It's not the Martins of this world, it's not the Harrises, it's not their von der Leyens, it's not their families. It's ordinary working class people that are used as cannon fodder, much the same as what's happening. For instance, we see all the horrific wars around the world at the moment, in Ukraine and Sudan and many more countries as well, where people are suffering and dying completely, needlessly, pointlessly, and not necessarily. But the same spin will be pushed out by the Irish government about defending our values, our freedom, all this nonsense again, that it's just constant propaganda that's pushed down people's throats, and who fundamentally is benefiting from what's going on. A lot of filters back to the giant corporations who decide on the foreign policy. And as I said in my initial comments, this is about protecting the US security and borders. It's just, you couldn't make it up. But again, thanks again so much for all the support of my videos, really appreciate them. Should we put the interests of the people here in Ireland first, supporting our own border, supporting our own country and our own people, but putting the needs of our people first, and that stands up with our independence, and on top of it, our neutrality is vitally important. So thanks for supporting my videos. Please keep sharing them, and thanks again. Take care. Slán.